I have a tagline, I guess you could say. I think I say it a lot in my book. It's "You're still here." I don't say that for any other reason than if you're still here, you get to write how your story ends. Nobody else writes it for you. I teach at Oral Roberts University. I teach pastoral theology. I teach classes on moral health and moral injury on like a master's and doctoral level. What I'm about to say, I would never teach to do in a class.
All right, folks, welcome back to part 2 of the Eagle Ops Rally Point podcast. Part 2 with Dr. Carter Check, personal friend of mine, VA, clinical clinician, and an amazing dude in his own right. Doctor, wrote a few books. In our first episode, we were speaking directly about Dr. Carter Check and his history as starting out in the Army as a CAV scout, and where his kind of drive and focus for what he does every day really kind of came from, in being in a situation where really has kind of started a moral injury situation through the Army, and in transitioning through that. And then afterwards, now being working for the VA and helping veterans deal with moral injury and PTSD and suicide ideations and things of that nature. And so we're going to lead directly into this second part and speak directly to some things that you're doing right now that's helping with that beyond the VA, and being working for the VA and working on that suicide prevention. So you're doing a lot of things both inside the VA as well as outside. And that number one that really kind of ties me and you together as far as our rally points and things is Hunt Therapy. And that's a nonprofit that you started. And tell us a little bit about Hunt Therapy and what Hunt Therapy is.
Yeah. Well, when you hear the word hunt, I don't want you to think of the killing and harvesting of animals. What I want you to think about is, what do you need to hunt after in your life to have purpose? Now, maybe that is hunting, fishing, rock climbing, river rafting, or maybe it's collecting mushrooms, could be washing rocks, whatever that is. What do you need to hunt after to have purpose in your life? And when I was doing my work at Vanderbilt, and I was trying to decide, if my life ended tomorrow, Shep, what gift did I want to give the universe from my heart? And it was a book, Hunt Therapy. And when I wrote that dissertation, Hunt Therapy, which turned into Healing in the Wild, it was born out of my model of self-care. It was born out of my love for archery, which taught me how to breathe. Because listen, you got to breathe good to be a good shot with a gun, but you really got to breathe good to be a good shot with a bow. Right?
Especially in the scenarios that you are hanging from a tree limb.
So. Right. Yeah. And growing up, hunting white-tailed deer, hunting turkeys, predators, just taking in sunsets. I mean, just think about this for a second. Everybody is drawn to the outdoors in some scenario. Some people, it's a certain spot on a beach, a specific beach. Some people, it's that view from the condo at that beach. They don't even like to be on the beach. Mm-hmm. They just like the view from the condo of the beach.
I like to hear the waves.
Right? Yeah. Listening to waves, a creek side, a riverbank, up on top of a mountain, looking at a mountainside. The thing about nature is, when you're hurting, you need someone to show up. Well, guess what? Sometimes people don't show up, but nature does. As long as you show up, nature will show up. There's something about being in a deer stand at 4 a.m. in the morning as the woods start to wake up. You're not thinking about the office space, the phone calls, and if you are, you're not present in the moment. But as the sun starts to come up and the woods start to awaken. Something inside you starts to awaken too. That's hunt therapy. That's hunt therapy.
All right, guys. So what you just heard, awesome story. I want to connect you to a top 5 resource guide that we've put together completely free for you. You click the link in the description. It will take you to a list. All of those resources are right there. If you have any further questions, should be super easy, but we can help you out with anything else you need to go. Just reach out.
And so when I started that work and I started to really think about, okay, what do I want to give the universe? It was my model of self-care. It was what had walked with me through the worst moments of my life. How did I deal with the worst pains, the worst losses, the worst mindsets, the worst thoughts of my own life, of my future? How did I deal with divorce? How did I deal with separation from my kids? How did I deal with fractures of my identity, who I was? What was I going to be? How was I going to become it? It was hunt therapy. It was being outside. And so when I wrote hunt therapy as an upstream suicide prevention, that's really what turned into healing in the wild.
That's awesome. It's very unique on that side. And obviously what ties us together, because I talk about this all the time, that, the upstream side of things of everything that we do at Eagle Ops is focused on just that. I want to catch you here and bring you back down to where we're managing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So wherever you're at, I want to catch you before you get up here, because at the very top, like there's one way, potentially 2 ways, right? One way is, hey, let's back down and get back to the managing life. And then the other way I can't take back.
Yeah.
Right. And so I talk about this all the time, like that big mountain. I say this all the time, talk about like it's at the edge. You're at the edge, or I want to catch you before you get to the edge. Well, before that, and let's bring you back down to where we can manage. Man, you can come and be in the suck with us,
Yeah.
But we can deal here. Up here, it's a lot tougher to deal with, right?
Yeah.
And so if I can help you and assist you, or we can help you and assist you with those resources and connections to bring you back down to where we're manageable, that's where we want to stay, right? And that's what, man, going out, like you said, just hunt therapy, being out in the woods.
Yeah.
As you were telling that story, I remember as a kid just sitting up in the tree stand, and you just remember the crackle and every little bitty noise and thing around you. And most of the time it's that stinking squirrel that's like 30 yards out and you can't see it and just making all the racket. And you're like,
it's always
it's a big buck.
you. It's always behind you, right? You're like,
it's a big buck. It's a big buck, but you can't move too much. Love it. It's so awesome. Yeah.
I know we talk a lot about suicide prevention, right? Because that's the apex of the work we do, right? That has to be. When someone takes their life, they're out of the game. You can't work with them anymore, right? And suicide is a crisis, but it's also a pattern. And it's a pattern that we haven't really learned how to deal with. Everybody gets fixated on the 22-day number, and it hasn't been 22 a day in a long time. It's actually more than that now. Yeah. But you got to break the pattern. And so what hunt therapy does, what Eagle Ops rally points do, is they help break the pattern. A clinic is a controlled environment, right? You go into a VA clinic and the mental health professionals, right? And you see them. It's a controlled environment. And that's a great thing, but it's also a terrible thing. Because as veterans in controlled environments, we learn to control our behavior too. We have to perform.
Yeah.
When you get out in the wild, that pattern is broken. If I take a group of veterans out to the Ocoee River and they start strapping on life vests and helmets, and they, you remember when you drive by that first waterfall of that one rapid, and you're like, whoa, like this is, we enter in to the river into a class 4 rapid. Not like it's down the river. We entered into the rapid, and we had to negotiate all the way across it as soon as we got in. So it wasn't like, hey, once we get in, learn how to use your paddles, blah, blah, blah. It's like, hey, once we get in, everybody needs to paddle your ass off because we've got to get all the way across this rapid to go down on the left side. And guess where we are? We're all the way on the right side. And I think the reason my heart is always drawn to the Ocoee River is when I went to grad school right after my divorce, and I was really brokenhearted. But when I did my undergrad there close to the Ocoee River, I had a buddy there, Michael, who would always take me down the river. He'd call me up and be like, hey, I got a spot in my boat. You want to go? So I had tons of experience on that river. And when I showed back up in that same town to do my graduate school work, but now I was a distance dad. I had all this time on my hands. I was, throwing myself into grad school, throwing myself into the distance of being a divorcee and parent, kids living away from you. We were having lunch one day and Michael said to me, he goes, hey, why don't you train to be a river guide? Like you do need a job, right? And I was like, well, yeah, I guess I do. He's like, man, when are you ever going to be able to do that again? And that way, when your kids aren't around, you got something that you can do. And I can't think of a better decision I've ever made in my entire life. Now, I will tell you, when we trained, it was like late March, early April, and it was the coldest late March, early April. I remember that was my first introduction to cold therapy as far as water immersion that I've ever had. And I didn't even know what cold plunging was, but that was cold plunging 101. But after that, and I became a river guide, I excelled because I knew the river so well. And so as a first year guide, I was able to start doing trips up on the Olympic section as a first year guide. And that's kind of unheard of in that arena up on the Ocoee River. And when you get up into the Olympic section, you realize real quick, this was designed for the Olympics. Right. So it's no joke up there. You're going to find out really quick in class 4 rapids, what you're made of. But let me share with you what the river taught me that no clinical space ever taught me. That water is flowing in one direction, and you can fight it all you want. You can try and swim upstream as hard as you want, but you know what you're going to do? You're going to go underwater. Or you can turn and you can go with the flow, and you can figure out how to navigate that water because it's more powerful than you. And that's how life is. Life is more powerful than you. And you need to learn how to navigate it because guess what? You are going to have circumstances and situations that happen in your life that are going to be painful. When I speak in front of large groups of people, I always ask a question right at the beginning because normally I'm talking about something that's connected to loss and suffering and meaning and purpose, right? And I always say, who in this room has ever experienced loss? Every hand in the room goes up because we all do. The only people who haven't experienced loss just haven't lived long enough to experience it. And they're usually in like kids in grade school or something, right? And unfortunately, even kids experience significant loss at a young age, right? And that forms adverse childhood experiences, form different trauma responses, even from a young age. But I learned you got to go with the flow. And it didn't matter how many times you ran that river. It was never the same water level. I remember one day we were doing a trip for a bunch of business people that showed up, and I just happened to be one of the ones that got to go with like some of the really senior guides. We're doing a full day where we do the upper and the lower, like the trip I took with you. And I remember as we were walking down the ramp to the lower, there had been that big thunderstorm, and these rapids look different. Right. I mean, the water was cranking. Normally, the water's cooking at about 1,800 cubic feet per second out of the dam. This day, it was more like 3,200. There were rapids that were normally very dangerous that were washed out, and ones that only show up at that level. Okay. And so even the senior guides were like looking at each other like, oof, this one's going to be something.
Right.
And most of that trip was in the middle of a thunderstorm. When you're down in the river basin and it's lightning and thundering and crashing, you're not pulling over to the side.
Right. Yeah, you're going
down. You're going down the river. Right. And going down, now there's class 5 rapids. Now there's some of the 3s or 4s. Some of the 4s are 5s, some of the 2s are 4s. And it was a different type of run, but one of my favorite, because once you run through and you realize, damn, if I can do that, there's nothing I can't do. I remember one time, we were coming into a rapid called Broken Nose, and there was this lady sitting on the back of the boat, and the thing is really tricky, and your wife Jessica knows this better than anybody, is you can just pop right out of the boat at any moment, right? And you got to keep your feet secure, you know. You never know when a rock is gonna. There's been times when I've been guiding a trip, and I've popped out the back, and my crew didn't even know I was out of the boat, and I'm swimming to try and catch up and jump in, and I'm like, all forward, and they didn't even know I was gone. And that's how tricky it can be sometimes, you know, just to navigate some of those eddies and the hydraulics. But I remember we're going into this S wave in Broken Nose. And the reason it's called Broken Nose, remember that's the one with the 2 ledges, right? And there's really only 2 ways to navigate Broken Nose: straight on or straight backwards. Because if you go sideways, you're going to roll, your entire crew is going to empty out. And it's called Broken Nose for a reason. It's very swift water and very shallow water. So people die on this river often. Right. Okay. So I remember we're going into the S wave, which is super important because the S wave and the one stroke you have to take as you come out of that S wave is going to decide whether you're going to go forward
or back,
backwards or sideways. Yeah. And I remember as we're going in the S wave, she pops right out of the boat. And almost instinctively, I grabbed her by the back of her life vest, and I didn't pick her up. I pushed her as deep as I could, and then I let the buoyancy of her raft vest shoot her out of the water, and I sat her back down, and without missing a beat said, all forward, and got us navigated. And I realized I've been through some pretty crappy things in my life, but there's also some really awesome moments. And she had no idea the danger she was in at that moment, but I was her guide. And even then, I had started to understand I'm designed to be a guide. I'm designed not because I'm supposed to tell you what it looks like ahead, but because some of the pain and suffering that I've experienced has established me or created me to walk with some people in their most extreme pain. And that is where hunt therapy is born out of. It's to interrupt the pain pattern, to sit with people outside of clinical spaces and to be able to just do life with them. Maybe we call it a distraction. I think of it more as like engagement. Yeah.
I love your analogy of the river. It's going one way and you can fight it as long as you want. But it's still going to go that way, and you will go that way eventually. Yeah. Like you can fight it all you want.
Yeah.
But the one thing that we do very well is we change your perspective, right? We get to be the mentor and the guide if you'll just listen, give us the opportunity, right? We got to make a connection to be able to get there. But once we make that, then we can guide you and mentor you through that process and help. That's the unique thing about both Eagle Ops and hunt therapy. It gives us that ability to be able to make the connection so that we can change that perspective. Right?
That's it.
That's
there's a tool that I learned along the way from a book called Motivational Interviewing, which if you want to be a communicator, if you want to learn how to walk with people in like their worst moments, there's not a better book to read than Motivational Interviewing, because it just gives you a little bit of a way to use language to your benefit. I pride myself off of, and you've been around me enough to know this, I pride myself off of having conversations with people and them not feeling like I'm talking down to them or like I'm the smartest person in the room. You better listen to what I have to say, because if you don't, you're going to be screwed. Right. But it's more like we're walking down to the creek side and maybe there's something that we'll talk about along the way that maybe I'm trained a little bit on how to extract some information from you, but I'm only extracting it because I know it's going to support life in you and not death. And so in motivational interviewing, there's this on page 174. Try me, go check it out. It's called the importance ruler. So there's 3 questions I ask every high-risk vet that I talk to on a daily basis. The first one is, where do you draw your strength from? I just want to know what makes you resilient. Where do you draw your strength from? The second one is, what are your support systems look like outside of the VA?
The third one I love the most.
Yeah. On a scale of 0 to 10, this is the importance ruler. 0 being not important at all, 10 being the most important thing in the world. How important is it for you to live? This is a critical question. Okay. You remember in episode 1, we were talking about that moral imagination, right? And most people are in this tunnel. And in that tunnel, they have this loop of the worst interpretation of themselves. Shame has taken such a strong hold that shame has convinced them that just living, they're not worthy of. So, we deal with a lot of veterans who suffer survivor's guilt. We deal with a lot more who deal with survivor's shame, right? They don't just feel guilty. They feel not worth living. And so when I say, where are you at on that scale, 0 to 10, the most common answer I get, Shep, because remember, these people are flagged high risk. So they've either attempted or are contemplating taking their life. They usually say 5. 5 is the most common. 0 is the next most common.
Wow.
And the reason they don't say I'm a 10 is because their imagination is destroyed. They can't even think what a 10 would look like. It's like talking to someone right after they lost their infant child. Can you imagine? You show up, 2 parents have just lost an infant child. If you start trying to talk to them about the future's going to be okay, time heals all wounds, or you sling some scripture to them, like, all things work together for those who are called according to God's purpose, anything like that, you might as well just stabbed them in the heart with a knife. You've crossed a line that you shouldn't cross. And it doesn't mean that scripture is not beneficial. It doesn't mean that 10 years from now, they might not look back and feel better, not that they lost their kid, but just feel better about life in general, right? That they're surviving, but it's not a wound that's ever going to heal. So when they say, I'm a 5, I don't say, how can I get you to a 10? Because their imagination can't even go there. The reason they told you you're a 5, that's as far as their imagination can go. That's as far as hope will allow them to see a future. So instead of saying, how can I get you to a 10? I say, help me understand why you're not a 1. And I shut up.
I love it.
Because whatever they say, whatever comes out of their mouth at that moment, promise I made to my battle buddy, my service dog, grandma so-and-so said something. It doesn't matter what comes out of their mouth. Whatever they say, that is the source of their strength. Mm-hmm. That is why they are still sucking air.
That's why.
It's why they didn't blow their brains out. Right. So focus on that. If you want a tool, you can't find a better tool than the importance ruler to extract from someone the little ounce of hope that they probably don't realize is within them. Because shame has already told them there's nothing to be hopeful for. If they tell me they're a 0, I say, help me understand why you're still living. I shut up. And I don't care how long it takes. The best tool in a clinical space or outside a clinical space is awkward silence. Mm-hmm. That's why we always try to fill it. Let awkward silence do its work. Wait for the answer. Don't rescue them. Don't feed them an answer. Wait for what's in them. Something's there. There is something that has kept them from blowing their brains out. And so wait for it.
Well, like I said, I knew what that answer was. Obviously, I've heard that. You've told me that a few dozen times at this point, and I always love that because it changes the perspective of how and why you ask that question, right? It gives us an opportunity to be able to find out what their hope is.
Yes.
Even from a 0, if they're still here, they do have hope. They just don't realize that they do. And if they're a 5, then they know they definitely have, like, they'll tell you. And so that's an amazing side of it that, I've used ever since that you told me that years ago. And I do it indirectly, but it's exactly what it is trying to find what that hope is so that we can utilize that hope to kind of move them forward and find the next best kind of situation for them. Right. So that kind of leads me into your book, like Healing in the Wild. So you transition to hunt therapy, all the things that we do. Healing in the Wild is a book that you wrote specifically in telling those stories and bringing that out of why you believe, and obviously it works very well, how that can help any and all, not just veterans, but anyone on being able to assist themselves and give them, your book gives some really good insight and guidance into it, gives that kind of the the clinical side and maybe some data statistics, but really shows, hey, this is how we connect the dots. And the one thing that I always want to, kind of come back to is that for a veteran, and I know this is kind of I'm leading you on this question, but by page 10, like how from 0 to page 10, how do you want that veteran to feel? Like there's some kind of points that you put in very quickly in that book to say, hey, read this. And by page 10, you're going to know that, hey, this is going to be helpful to you.
Yeah.
So give me some insight into that. And
I want them to be less alone. That's it. By page 10, I want them to know that they're not the only one who's been through something. Right. And a lot of people feel like they're on their own road, that no one's going to understand where I am. And so I want them to feel less alone.
That's good stuff, brother. Obviously, I teed that one up and got us in our feelers on that one for sure. That is, we don't say it enough, but honestly, you talk about rally points for us, and that's exactly one of the premises around everything we do is trying to create an opportunity in an instance and not for them to come out and connect, so that if they are alone, you no longer have that excuse if you just show up.
Yeah.
We provide an opportunity that all of our rally points are focused on one very simple thing, and that is there's no cost of admission. Cost of admission is you showing up.
To
just show up. We say it all the time. Just show up. Come join us at the rally point. But the cost of admission is just showing up. And if you'll do that, then all of these things can happen.
Yeah.
Right? That connection can happen. We can help fight that situation where if you are feeling lonely, brother, we can make a connection and we can break that barrier down.
Yes.
And we can help in changing that perspective.
Yes.
To giving you more of, I'm not saying get rid of it, right? Like we're not looking at that. Like you said, like you're going to live with some of these things the rest of your life, right? It's how we can help guide you and mentor you through to look at it from a different lens and a different perspective to allow you to move forward with it. Right.
Yes.
I say this all the time, and this partially relates that we don't learn when it's easy. We learn through adversity. And Lord knows all of us have been through adversity in our lives, some much more than others, and we deal with it differently. But it's the perspective in which that we gain when we come out the other side of it, and some of us are dealing with it. Like you're dealing with it every single day.
Yeah.
But if you've been through an instance like you did, in Korea, that changed the trajectory of not only your career in the Army, but obviously the rest of your life, because it gave you a new perspective and opened a door that you had no idea that, was even there prior to. That's what it's about. It's just trying to given that opportunity to be able to change that perspective. And the adversity is what got us to that hurdle and gave us the experience to be able to know and understand that, man, we can get through this. And once you get through it, you're stronger for it.
Yeah.
And you may not be stronger in the muscle strong, but you're stronger mentally wise because now I've been through it.
Yeah.
The great thing about all military on that side of it is we've all been through boot camp. And we've all been beat to death, to the physical exhaustion. If you went through true boot camp and understand what I'm saying here is that mentally wise, they want to know how strong you are on the backside. They can break down muscle. You can only do so many push-ups.
Yeah.
And you can be the baddest man on the planet, but you can only do so much. Muscle fatigue is a real thing and they know it,
Yes.
right? But how do you handle that adversity after?
Yeah.
Like when you cannot physically move again,
Yeah.
right? I can't pick up my arms, whatever.
Yes.
That adversity allows us, to be stronger for it on the other side if we allow ourselves to be stronger for it. And if you change your perspective on that,
Yeah.
then that'll allow you to be stronger for any situation moving forward.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the easiest path, at least that I have found, and I think that we have found, is the connection with others that have been there and done that to help us guide
Yes.
us through, those
Yeah.
tough waters.
Everybody has problems.
Right.
But you show me someone who has purpose in their life, and I'll show you someone who has the ability to walk through problems, sometimes almost like they don't exist. But if you lack purpose, and purpose is one of those things, especially moral injury has a way of fracturing your identity, and shame tries to tell you that you're not purposeful. Okay. So you have no purpose. As a matter of fact, best thing for you to do would be go blow your brains out because the world would be better without you. I really feel most people who die by suicide, Shep, outside of like a murder suicide, most people who die by suicide feel like they're jumping on a grenade to save everybody else from the blast. They're unburdening everyone by their existence, taking it away. Now, you and I know that's a lie, right? And the shrapnel from that grenade actually extends way further. But anybody who's listening to this podcast, I want them to know something about moral injury that we don't talk about enough. Moral injury is not a sign of a weakness within you. It's actually a highlight of the best part of you.
Right. You have to have the values.
The fact that you care is evidence of the best part of you.
Right.
Because if you didn't have morals, it wouldn't matter. If you were a psychopath or a sociopath, you wouldn't care.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I sit with those Vietnam vets who have been suffering with something, it used to be World War II vets. Now it's mostly Vietnam vets, right? Have been suffering with something for like 40 plus years. And they tell me like their deepest, darkest pain. And I just stop for a second and I say, I'm amazed at how much you care. And they look at me like I'm like, what? And I'm like, just the simple fact that this is still weighing on you this long is evidence that it matters to you. And so moral injury isn't a sign of the weakness or the bad part of you. It's actually a highlight of the best part of you. And that's the interpretation that we have to interrupt. And that interpretation is only interrupted with community and connection.
Allowing us to be able to say, hey, brother, like that, we've been there, understand that, and take it from another light.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'll tell you a story. So just go ahead and get your tissue ready. All right.
Killing her.
I was sitting with a vet in a group several months ago. And of course, I'm not going to say a name, but the group, we helped create a workbook that we use in the VA. It's called REAL. It means reclaiming experience and losses. We really come at moral injury through the lens of loss, right? And not necessarily the specifics of what the event was, because sometimes you get so tied into the why that happened, you never step into the how. So you're so fixated on why did this happen?
Right.
You never get into like, how can I survive it? And the reality is this, you'll probably never know why.
Right.
Okay. And so I'm sitting with this vet in group. And a lot of times these groups will go on 12, 14 weeks long, just depending upon, the sequence of how long it takes somebody to tell their story and just to work through the mechanics of the process. This one particular veteran had to run over kids with his Humvee. He was a driver for a colonel. And he had to run over kids. And these kids were armed. And a lot of people say, hey, well, the kids were armed. I mean, look, they're kids. And what really caused a lot of pain for this specific veteran is the kids that he had to run over were the same ages as his grandkids. And so anytime he spent time with his grandkids, which he would say are his biggest source of like strength and hope, the longer he was with them, they also became his biggest deficit. And so imagine the struggle of it being in that situation. The very thing you love the most is the thing that's hardest to sit with for the longest. And so I remember, when people come into these groups, I'm not one of those people who, when I hear you say something, I'm not trying to correct you. I'm not trying to correct your theology. I'm really trying to hear your language and then adapt to your language. But there are moments in those 12 weeks where I lean into the gift God's given me. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the gift for a second. So I'm not sitting here teaching, I teach at Oral Roberts University. I teach pastoral theology. I teach classes on moral health and moral injury on like a master's and doctoral level. What I'm about to say, I would never teach to do in a class. But what I would say is what I'm about to share with you, I learned in the secret place. Mm-hmm. I learned in time with God. You ever seen those Denzel Washington movies like The Equalizer, where he's like, he times how quick he's going to kill everybody in the room. And then, but he sees it play out in real time. Well, this is, for whatever it's worth. And if anybody's watching this, they're like, this guy's crazy. I have those moments where I see the scenario play out in front of me. And I've spent enough time in the secret place to know that's coming from somewhere else. And I'm going to follow it. I'm going to be obedient because I know every time I do, it always works out. So I'm sitting there. Now, I've listened to this veteran call himself a kid killer, Shep, multiple hundreds of times since I've been sitting in groups with him. Now, the first time I heard him call himself a kid killer, I could have been like, man, you're not a kid killer. You had to kill kids, but that's not who you are. But remember, we were talking about imagination. Their imagination can't go there. They can't not see that. There's so much residue in that tunnel vision that they have to try and change someone's imagination or to inspire them to be positive. It doesn't work that way. But through relationship, after sitting with them for about 8-9 weeks, telling stories, hearing stories, building connection, there was a moment as we're sitting there at the table, and this is probably like the 100th plus time I've heard this guy say, I'm a kid killer. And then I saw it play out in front of me. I saw myself grab my car keys and slide them across the table. And so I did. I grabbed my truck keys. I slid them across the table. And I said, hey, after group today, we're going to take my truck, you're going to drive, and we're going to go down to the schoolyard and we're going to run over some kids. And he looked at me like, what? And all the guys in the group looked at me like, have you lost your mind? Right. And even my mental health co-facilitator who was sitting with me, who I've done over 50 groups with,
right?
I could even feel like the tension from her. Yeah. And I said to him, I said, well, you're a kid killer, right? So let's go run over some kids.
Challenge.
And he goes, I'm not a kid killer. And I said, that's exactly right. Say it again. He goes, I'm not a kid killer. I said, say it one more time. He goes, I'm not a kid killer. I saw him say it 3 times, Shep. He broke down. He cried for 5 minutes. You know what he never called himself again? Ever. Because guess what? He was not a kid killer.
Right. He knew it.
He just had to hear himself say it. And there's so many of our brothers and sisters who are suffering and they have these interpretations of themselves that are they're not true. They're not true. And I wish I could sit with every single one of them and see it play out. Right. But you know what? I can't. I can't be with every single one of them. But I could that day with him.
All about the opportunity and being able to listen.
I could have lost my job that day.
which saved a life and probably turned his life around.
If I lose it tomorrow because someone listens to this, I don't care. Saved a life. It's worth it.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I would say the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's exactly what we talk about. Like Eagle Ops talks about, reaching the guys, before crisis happens, and how does like your work in that scenario kind of play into that? I mean, we've touched a little bit on that,
Yeah.
but that's really kind of probably our most connected point there. Just it's really our focus. Like before the crisis happens, I want you connected with us because when that tough time happens, we want to be there. Right.
Yeah.
And so how does your work obviously connect in with all of that?
I have a tag line, I guess you could say. I always say it. I think I say it a lot in my book. It's "You're still here," right? And I don't say that for any other reason than if you're still here, you get to write how your story ends.
Right.
Nobody else writes it for you. And if you're still here, that matters. It matters because you're surviving. Here's an absolute truth. No matter the hell someone's been through, if they're sitting across from you, they're operating at 100% success rate of being there.
Right.
Now, I don't know what else you operate at 100% at, but that's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
So keep that going, because the difference is if you're not there, you don't get to see it turn around.
Right.
If you're not there, you don't get to see the restoration of the broken relationship with your kid that you haven't seen in years. If you're not there, you don't get to see forgiveness if you need it, or to extend it if you needed to.
Right.
If you take yourself out of the game, there's no longer a game to play.
That's right. I always like teeing you up for that one because that was always a good one. I love that. I love your analogy on that one and the breakdown of "You're still here." Like it, the 100% is, that hit a chord with me years ago whenever you first started saying that. And I was like, that's pretty amazing. So, if someone picks up Healing in the Wild and doesn't know you, what do they have? Is there anything else that, outside of 10, I don't have to go back to that full one, but is there anything else in Healing in the Wild that, hey, this is definitely something that you want to pay attention to?
Yeah, I think what you need to know about,
I love the book. So
I think if you don't know me, what you're going to find out is I'm not writing from a space of like academia or some theory. I'm someone who has experienced pain and loss and hurts. And I've not arrived in the sense of I don't still deal with the residue of some of my pains and hurts and losses. I do. Anybody that tells you they don't is an absolute liar.
Right.
But I am someone who has figured a few things out about resiliency, about hope, about relationships and connection. And I have a vested interest in the work that I do. My oldest son's a Cab Scout. And so I'm thinking ahead of like, there's going to be a time when he's going to separate from the military. Remember when I said it's the wounds that you can't see that most people suffer with, the ones that don't have funerals.
Right.
And most people who leave military service, when they lose the uniform, when they first get out of that uniform, they might say, "Oh man, I'm so glad that I'm not in this uniform anymore."
Mm.
But then they start to live into lack of structure, lost identity, dealing with civilians, right? And in that, there is going to come a day where they are going to wish or long for some of the things that uniform stood for. And that's a loss. And I think about my son losing that and how to navigate what's ahead. And when I graduated from Vandy and I wrote healing in the wild and all of that, I thought I was done. Right. I thought I was done with academia. Right. I'm like, I'm good. I'm teaching at ORU. Well, I'm already a suicide prevention specialist. And so woof, I kind of took a deep breath and I felt the Lord say, you're not done yet. Because to be an expert in moral injury wasn't as important as being an expert in what it means to be morally healthy. Because if someone says I have a moral injury, well, what's that an injury to? And it would have to be whatever you would say makes you morally healthy. And that's subjective. It's not the same across everybody, but you can strip religion out of it because religion is only something that should enforce, or I'm going to say belief in God of whatever theistic faith, that should only enforce what makes you morally healthy, but it shouldn't define it. Right. And so when I really started to dive into that, what I found was if we really want to get into stopping suicide deaths, and I don't just mean veterans, I mean across the board human, okay? I would argue until I passed out on the floor that more people take their lives from moral injury than they do anything that's diagnostic. And the problem with scientific model diagnostic things is not that it exists. It's just that it's symptom driven. Right. And it can be so symptom driven, you miss people. Well, if you miss people, you've missed it all. Right. But we're looking at like, oh, they're anxious, they're depressed, they have PTSD and all of this. And all of that information is important. But in episode 1, we were talking about like what leads to suicide death. All of our data is statistical in that area. Well, where's the data that leads to life? And so when I started to think about moral health, I started to think about, okay, if we really want to stop veteran suicide, if we really want to minimize the amount of veterans who die by suicide on a daily basis, or if we really want to minimize the amount of humans that die by suicide on a daily basis, maybe we should focus on reasons to live, not what leads to death. Okay? Because then that would be upstream. Remember the river?
Yeah.
Hey, once you get downstream, you can't operate upstream anymore. You're already too far down. So where we're operating to stop suicides as a society is too far downstream. It's already happening. But if we can get upstream where life is actually created, can be changed before it gets to the emergency. If we can get up there and we can create community and connection and we can create interruptions in those negative loops that people are experiencing, well, then we can show them reasons to live. And it just seems like maybe I have this sneaky suspicion that teaching people how to live is probably the best deterrent to them dying. Right. So if we can teach people how to be morally healthy, then maybe they'll be less susceptible to moral injury because shame wouldn't be able to come in and tell them who they aren't because they already know who they are.
That's a very unique thing about what we do at the Rally Points is that, we get asked, for resource. Obviously, we're a connector for all the way across the board, but we are 100% operate in that space of you're struggling, but you're not to the crisis mode, right? Like we're not the crisis. Like there is a whole nother group of folks like yourself and beyond that can help in a true crisis mode. We're up here, like you're dealing with life, mm-hmm. right? And sometimes life gets pretty heavy and you start getting up to that, that upper echelon. But the reality of it is we deal in this middle area. The vast majority of what we're doing is we want to connect with you and build that rapport and relationship so that when you are dealing with those heavy things, that we can then plug you in and bring you back to the operating zone in essence, right?
Yes.
And so the crisis side of it, yes, there is definitely resources there, but that is not the nature of, that's not what we do. We focus on before we get there, right? Yeah. We struggle a little bit because, we operate under that suicide prevention grant with the VA. And I struggle with trying to turn in numbers because we connect with so many veterans across the state and we catch them before here.
Yeah.
And so, yes, 100%, we're trying to connect every single one of them to the VA, healthcare system, to benefits and services and et cetera. But our focus is to catch them here before they get to that crisis. And the VA suicide prevention obviously wants numbers.
Mhm.
Well, if you don't answer the right question on the right form, I can't put you into the VA system this way.
Right.
So my numbers are low.
Yeah.
Well, our numbers are low because we're doing our stinking job.
That's right.
And try to get clinicians.
Your numbers should be low.
So try to get the VA to recognize that is a
Yes.
struggle for me right now.
Yeah.
But the suicide prevention, I know what we're doing, and you see it, obviously in what you're doing, and together we're doing exactly that. We are connecting them to relationships and connecting them to hope and connecting them to the opportunity to be able to see whatever they're dealing with in a different perspective, to move them through that so they don't get to that level of crisis.
Yes.
I mean, if I could wrap up everything that we do, that's truly what we're going to focus on.
Yeah.
We're going to focus on that opportunity to be able to say, hey, brother, hey, sister, we're here. We're living life just like you are. We're dealing with those same things. One of us or another, or all of us, depending on what the situation is, how can we help guide you through that to keep you in this manageable zone? And then through that, let me open every door that I possibly can to be able to help you, guide you, be that guide to be able to help.
Back in World War II, the engineers who were trying to figure out how to fortify the planes who were doing the bomb runs so they wouldn't suffer catastrophic failure, right? They were looking at the planes. So all the planes that were coming back, they were looking where they were shot up. And so can we strengthen the wings, the engine compartments, like all that type of stuff they were looking at. And one of the engineers of the group said, hey, we're missing a data set here. We're missing the information from the planes that actually did get shot down, right. The ones that we didn't get back. Yeah. Where were they hit? Where did they suffer catastrophic failure? Right? We're missing a data set in this suicide prevention thing. Where's the information from the guy who was going to blow his brains out 20 years ago, who now is thriving as a human? Why? What have you been doing? Did you go to an Eagle Ops rally point?
Mm-hmm. To connect, yeah.
Yeah. Did you attend a Bible study? Did you find faith? Did you have a kid? Did you start a new career? I mean, all that information is great, but none of it is there. So when I decided to pursue a PhD in healthcare ethics, I did it because I wanted a research degree where I could be a primary investigator, where I could take the information that I'm already able to get from what I'm doing within the VA and from what you're doing outside of the VA. And we can start to collect information on what causes people to live, not what leads to death. Because you can't get great information on how to live from dead people. And I don't say that, I'm not trying to be cynical, right? It's very important, the data that we get that leads to death, but it's not as important as the data that leads to life. So what you're collecting, Shep, even though that's a struggle, and even though they don't understand the numbers, the reason is because the only numbers they're concerned about are the death numbers, which
just looking at a different perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We want the life numbers.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I would much rather get those phone calls of those veterans like we do on a regular basis now.
Yes.
Going, brother, thank you, because I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for what you guys do.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for that freedom shoot, that one opportunity, that one win to give me the hope to get to the next one.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
I think if there was an ask that we want to ask the listeners for right now is if you have gone to a rally point and you have experienced human flourishing, like if you've experienced a better day because of an experience at a rally point, let Eagle Ops know. Send them a note, send them a text, send them an email, send them a message, because those things are important. It amazes me that we only usually collect information through a crisis,
right, and
we don't collect like the good stuff. I know that from like book reviews, right? I mean, I think my book is great. And if you go read some of the reviews, people say great things.
Right.
But like when you read a really good book, the first thing you think of is not, oh, Let me go write a review.
Right.
There's something about your testimony that is really powerful for other people. Know the worth of your story. If you're listening to this, if you're watching this, and Eagle Ops has been a positive part of your story, reach out and tell it. Because you don't know who else is listening to that hears that and says, man, that sounds like me. Maybe I should go to a rally point. And if you even think, if it even comes into your head, if you think in your mind, maybe I should go to a rally point, don't even question it. You didn't have that thought. Like I will tell you, the enemy of your life didn't just put that thought in your head.
Right.
That thought came from something greater than you to push or promote you to go.
Absolutely.
So go. Show up.
That's it. Just show up.
Just show up.
Man, what a great two-parter here, brother. What a great way to wrap up our show today. And just thinking about, all the things that we kind of went over and all of both of our work, and everything you do with the VA, everything that you do with Hunt Therapy. And man, we're doing God's work on this side of it to try to connect every single veteran, every single family member, every service member, as you're making your transition back to connect to resources, connect to other veterans in the community, and help them make a successful transition home. Whether that started 60, 70 years ago or it started yesterday, that's our focus, right? I think both of our hearts and both of our missions as far as that goes. So if you're listening to this and you have not been to a rally point, and challenge to you and your family members, plug in your family members. You got a veteran, plug them into Eagle Ops, eagleops.org. Like and subscribe to this podcast because we're going to have some more amazing partners just like Dr. Carter Check here on this podcast to be able to bring you some more information about some amazing things in the community, some other partners that can help you and your family in different ways. Definitely check out Healing in the Wild, obviously, Doc's book, and he's got a few more on the way, I think. So
yeah, you can go to drcartercheck.com and you can find out just about anything you want about me. There's links to Hunt Therapy. There's links to books. There's links to, get you connected into resources and things like that. But take it from someone who was searching for a safe space and landed with an awesome service organization like Eagle Ops, where I can go not be Chaplain Check, not be Dr. Carter Check, but I can just go be Carter and just be a part of the community and the connection and live my best life. You should live your best life too. You deserve it.
Absolutely. All right, folks, wrapping up the episode of the Eagle Ops Rally Point Podcast, episode number 2 with Dr. Carter Check. Thank you, brother. Again,
My pleasure, Shep.
Tremendous. We're definitely going to have you come back and chat with us about some other things. I know you've got some other things in the work here in the future. And so like and subscribe to your podcast, wherever you watch podcasts at. Like and subscribe and stay connected with us. And to each and every one of you, meet us at the next rally point.